there's a lot of attention on the Ukrainian border right now, but what about our border? A man who was just there yesterday is the current Attorney General of Arizona, Mark Brnovich, who joins us on the phone right now. Mr. Attorney General, great to have you back with us.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks for having me.
I understand that you visited Yuma yesterday, which is, boy, it's a hotspot, isn't it? What did you see?
Well, as you know, our office has been at the forefront of trying to secure our southern border. I've been to Yuma numerous times, and even growing up here in Arizona, I've never seen the border as bad as it is right now. I mean, literally, we are just over a year now into this Biden man-made catastrophe at our southern border. More than 2 million people have illegally, unlawfully entered our country.
Yeah.
You have a record amount of fentanyl, methamphetamine flooding into our country. Our communities are less safe. And literally, you go down there and there's gaps. There's literally, the wall's not complete. We sued Biden Biden administration try to force him to keep building the wall because it does make us safer. And there's giant gaps in the wall. You have people literally coming across with, their bags, their luggage. And I mean, heck, you get more of a hassle going through TSA than you do illegally crossing our southern border. It's just absolutely crazy. And I know the American people sometimes don't fully appreciate how bad this is, but I just hope Secretary Mayorkas, Democrats there in Congress really have to step up and start explaining to America why they are basically destroying our southern border. It's not about abolishing ICE anymore. They are essentially destroying our southern border, and we are less safe as a country because of Joe Biden, Cartel Kelly, and Secretary Mayorkas.
Oh, okay. So you talk about some of the legal action you're taking, Mr. Attorney General. One is suing the administration to get them to continue to build that wall. What else are you attempting?
Well, we've got that lawsuit, and this just next month, in fact, this month at February 23rd, I'll be at the U.S. Supreme Court myself, once again, arguing a case involving the public charge rule. And this is the rule that basically the U.S. statute's been around for 100 years that basically says if you come into the United States and you want to become a citizen or get a green card, get legal status, you have to be able to provide for it yourself. That is, you can't be on benefits. Like waves of immigration in the past, you got to be able to support yourself, just like my relatives when they, immigrated to this country. And the Biden administration eradicated that. They got rid of it. And so I think it's important that if people want to come to the United States, we are a land of immigrants, but we're not the land of the welfare state. And people have to be self-sufficient. They have to be self-reliant. And we want people coming to the United States for the right reason.
Right.
And this, to me, is part of the Biden administration's plan to incentivize people coming here. And then, of course, we also have lawsuits involving trying to get the Biden administration to enforce existing law. The Biden administration, there's more than 1 million people now with deportation orders that they're not deporting. So you literally have criminals and people charged with serious crimes, rape, arson, manslaughter. They're being released into our communities, not just here in Arizona, but all over the country. So these are nationwide problems, and they're coming to a neighborhood to you very shortly.
Okay, this public charge rule, does it apply to people who want to claim asylum? Like, in other words, there's an exception here where maybe you can go on welfare if you achieve asylum in the United States?
Yeah, what the Biden administration has done is they're trying to give as many benefits to as many people as possible, right? Because
Right.
they want people to become dependent on a centralized government, whether they're legally here, whether they're immigrants, whether they're asylum seekers, whatever. So that's the first thing the progressives, the far left, trying to do. Now, what this rule deals with is people that are trying to establish legal status. So these are people that are trying to either get a green card or citizenship. And so that's what the rule is designed to do, is to, if you want legal status, so if you're not seeking refugee asylum, but if you're on the path to getting some legal status, that's when these benefits would essentially kick in. And as you know, it's the states that always bear the cost of this, whether it's, education, healthcare, there's a lot of programs that, the state's supposed to bear, but then you throw in the fact that, federal taxpayers, we pay our taxes, and, there's programs like, SNAP and food assistance.
Sure.
The Biden administration would allow your taxpayer dollars to flow to people that do not have legal status.
It's so totally abusive. There are people in the United States, Attorney General Mark Brnovich, there are veterans in the United States who desperately need access to resources like this. And instead, they're going to be rifled through by foreign nationals who come here and take advantage of these programs and the generosity of the American public. Because it seems like a pretty basic standard that any country would say, okay, look, if you're going to immigrate here, we'll have a policy where we establish that you can't come here and instantly be dependent on the generosity of the people. Like, we should have some expectation that you're self-sufficient and that you could provide.
Vince, I tell you what, I'm a first-generation American. I think you and I have talked about this before, that, you know, my parents lived through World War II. They lived through communism, and I was fortunate enough to be born here. And people want to come here because it's the greatest country in the world, and the rule of law means something. And even if you got a funny last name or people can't spell it or pronounce it, you can literally become your state's chief law enforcement officer. And I don't do polling, but I talk to my mom and her friends, and the old Bubbas from church and people from Eastern Europe, Poland and, Yugoslavia and the Czech Republic. Folks like that will tell you they are really angry at what's happening, even though they're immigrants. They're angry because people they think are cutting in line. They're angry because they had to work 2 and 3 jobs. They had to assimilate. And, guys like me that spoke Serbo-Croatian as my first language, I got dumped in a public school. I shouldn't say dumped, but I got put in a public school, and I had to learn English. And, and I'm very proud of my culture and my past, and I still speak Serbo-Croatian. But, at the end of the day, I'm an American, and we want to encourage people that come here that respect the rule of law, and that people that are coming here because they want to better themselves and their families, and not just come here to become dependent on centralized government.
By the way, for a guy who speaks Serbo-Croatian as his first language, I don't even detect any accent from you. You sound like you kind of have a pretty standard American dialect.
Oh, hvala toliko puno. That means thank you very much.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know. That's pretty cool. Let me also ask, kind of in addition to what you're doing when it comes to the border, what about the effort to fight back against the COVID law? I know that you've been going after HHS lately because you're sick of seeing racial discrimination being the rule of the land when it comes to the distribution of COVID treatments. Explain that.
Once again, this is the United Flippin' States of America, and everyone here should be treated equally, and everyone here should have an equal opportunity at the American dream. And the Biden administration is literally now allowed their HHS to issue rules that say, this FDA guidance that says that basically antibody treatments, they will allow healthcare providers to consider a patient's race when deciding whether to administer treatments against the Omicron variant. So think about that. You literally have the federal government now telling healthcare providers that they can, maybe implying that they should use race when they are considering treatments for a medical or health condition.
Remember the left a couple years ago, being a woman is not a pre-existing condition? You remember that? It was like, being female is not a pre-existing condition. And so now what the argument from the American left is actually being a certain skin color is a pre-existing condition, that it's somehow that is a signal of illness. I don't know. What is the argument that they're making?
Well, this is another example of President Biden further dividing our country, because as you know, and all your listeners know, COVID-19 doesn't discriminate. It affects everyone, regardless of their skin color or their racial background or ethnic background. But this is another example of the far left progressives that are in Uncle Joe's ear, and they're trying to further divide our country. And they're trying to tear down all of our institutions and really essentially make race-based decisions in the distribution of healthcare. I mean, this really is not only unconstitutional, it's just fundamentally un-American. And I think, we all must confront racism at every turn and every blind eye. And all what the Biden administration is doing in the far left is perpetuating racism in this country. And ultimately, I think that's because the far left, ultimately, they don't like America, and they want to tear down all of our institutions, and they want everyone to see everything that goes on in this country through the prism of race and ethnicity, and that really is very un-American to me.
Well, not only is it racist, which is callous, but it's callous in this way that it'll lead to worse outcomes for everybody. So you've got, for instance, you could have like a skinny black patient and an older, fatter white patient, and somehow the skinnier black patient would therefore rank higher in terms of priority, even though the likeliness that their health outcomes are going to be negative is lower, right? So the whole thing is insane. In other words, there are actually like health markers that you could look for that would make it super obvious who we should prioritize. Like, how old are they? How fat are they? Like the basic things you would look for. And that would solve any so-called racial disparity instantly.
Vince, I'm not a doctor and not a scientist, and I know that when I've been involved in these lawsuits against the Biden administration, including the one where we won against the Biden administration over the federal attempt to have federal contractors, mandate the vaccine for their employees, all the other lawsuits we've had, you get folks on the left or folks sometimes in the media like, oh my gosh, why are you anti-science? And so I try not to, I tell people all the time, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, me neither. But like I'm not either. I'm just telling you, this stuff's like obvious. Like even simple guys like us can figure this out. Like the whole thing is insane. The whole thing is insane. To use race as a way to apportion medicine is nuts, especially because there's obvious things you could look for in somebody's health to say, you know what, that guy really needs it and should be made a priority.
Well, this just hit me as we were sitting here talking. Then as you know, the Biden administration is not requiring, people that are entering the country illegally to get the vaccine. Some aren't even being tested. They're being flown out of this country. So if the Biden administration really cares about this, why are they letting folks in of different ethnicities? Why are they letting folks in from Jamaica that actually may be more susceptible under their version of events to getting COVID and spreading COVID? So
because they know it's a lie. Because they know it's a lie.
Of course it's a lie. Yes. Hopefully all your listeners appreciate this is the big lie right here.
Yeah. I mean, we see it in our area too. The other, one of your fellow attorneys general, we were just talking to Jason Miyares here in Virginia, and he was pointing out, this big fight we're having with these Northern Virginia schools, they claim that, well, the CDC says the kids should still wear masks. So that's why we're putting the masks on their faces. But as he pointed out, he said, what the CDC also says, that all the kids should be vaccinated, yet these schools, thank goodness, are not mandating vaccines here. In other words, they're like applying all of these standards on a very arbitrary basis, and really should be called out for it.
To paraphrase the late Justice Scalia, rest his soul, what the left does is it's like looking out into a crowd and picking out your friends. And so they kind of selectively choose which parts of science and which part of the guidelines they're going to follow and when they're going to follow. So we all know there's an intellectual dishonesty. And that's why in a time of crisis, our Constitution is more important than ever. So we can push back against that inclination of some folks to centralize power in Washington, D.C. Because once that happens, you're never going to get it back. And as we can see, as I can see, as the Attorney General and what's going on in our southern border, the Biden administration can't even do something where they're at their apex of their presidential authority when it comes to national security and border security. And they've completely mishandled that. And what makes you think that they're going to be able to handle healthcare, something that really isn't in the government's wheelhouse effectively?
They can't handle anything. They're just, he claims he claimed yesterday that he's going to cure cancer or whatever. Look, I hope he can make some gains. I hope anybody can make some gains on that issue, but I don't believe him because look how many, he's failed at everything. He's failed shutting down the virus, please. His predecessor claimed he would lower the seas. That didn't happen. Just these people need to stop. They're so preposterous. But that's why it takes people like you to push back against them.
Well, that's why I'm suing him. And as I said to some folks, and look, I was a judge advocate general in the Army, and I had friends that served in combat. And, all this talk about war, I'm sitting there saying to myself, this is all the Biden administration's misplaced priorities when Joe Biden wants to send our sons and daughters to secure the Ukrainian border, but he won't do anything to secure our border here.
Nope.
And when you think about how ridiculous that is, and then you think about when it comes to everything that's going on with this mismanagement of priorities when it comes to government, the consolidation of federal government trying to nationalize our elections, socialize our economy. It's really the damage. He makes Jimmy Carter look like a piker. This is like a once in a lifetime, devastating, generational impact that the Biden administration is having on all of us. And that's why, whether it's me in the courtroom or you on the show, we got to fight. We got to fight.
Attorney General Mark Brnovich, we've got international gunfire going on our southern border now. Fox was reporting today that right there on the Rio Grande, at the Rio Grande Valley sector, Border Patrol agents were fired upon yesterday across the border, and the Border Patrol returned fire. So we have gunfire going now in both directions across our southern border. And as you point out, we have troop deployments headed for Ukraine.
It's absolutely inexcusable. Mayorkas needs to be impeached, and I've said that before. Months ago, I called on him to be replaced because of his incompetence, but if the Biden administration won't replace him, I don't understand why he's not being impeached. And shame on people like Cartel Kelly that are going to be voting on judges and other judicial nominees when we have more than 100,000 people in this country dying of fentanyl and drug overdose deaths. and we have the cartels, as you just pointed out, seizing control of our southern border. America is less safe, it's more dangerous, and our sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, people are going to pay for this for an entire generation as a result of all the fentanyl, methamphetamine flooding into this country. I haven't seen this prices this low ever, and I was a gang prosecutor. I mean, it's leading to the destruction of this country internally, and then when you combine that with what they're trying to do with the centralization of power.
I'm sorry. Before I let you go, you said prices are low. Are you talking about for drugs, the methamphetamine?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. This is all, everything, gas, milk, anybody's going to the grocery store, everything's rising.
Yes.
Because I get the monthly updates on what prices are going for. I have to sign off on state wiretaps, going after the cartels. And just over a year ago, a street price of fentanyl in our area was about $20 a pill. It's now down to about $3 to $5. The price of methamphetamine is falling. And anyone that understands supply and demand knows that when prices are falling that dramatically, it's because the supply is dramatically increased. And as the supply of fentanyl and methamphetamine increase in our country, and this isn't staying in Arizona, it's going all over this country, as that increases, you are going to see more people die, and you're going to see more social costs and economic costs as a result of addiction and lost productivity, as, unfortunately individuals become, hooked on these very dangerous and addictive drugs and literally die from it.
This is really important, what you just shared with us, Attorney General Mark Brnovich. The only thing that's cheaper in Biden's America is methamphetamine and fentanyl. It's unbelievable. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. We're going to have you back soon.
Thanks, Vince.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course.